The crystal chandelier in the living room blazed, its light spilling across the long mahogany table, but it couldn't warm the chill in my heart. In the very center of the table, resting on a red velvet cloth, was a Pixiu statue carved from blood-red jade. The craftsmanship was exquisite. Its form was ferocious. It faced me with its maw gaping greedily, as if it wanted to devour everything in the world. My mother, Diane, sat ramrod straight, her face alight with an excitement she couldn't contain. She wore an expensive silk gown, and her well-preserved face held an air of absolute authority. "Anna, it's almost time. Get ready." This Pixiu, Mom had to pull so many strings to acquire it. It's all to turn your brother's luck around. Once things get better for him, things will get better for our whole family. Do you understand? Her words were gentle as always, but they felt like cotton soaked in poison, soft, yet lethal. Of course I understood. How could I not? In my past life, I understood all too well, and it got me killed without even a body to bury. Sitting across from me was my brother Leo. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored designer suit, and the Patek Philippe on his wrist reflected the cold light. He looked impatient, tapping his knuckles lightly on the tabletop, making a dull rhythmic sound. "Why are you wasting your breath on her? Let's just get this over with. I have an important meeting this afternoon." He looked at me as if I were a lifeless tool, a sacrificial offering to pave the way for his grand ambitions. I lowered my eyes, my long lashes hiding the icy hatred swirling within them. I was reborn on this very day, the true beginning of my life's tragedy, the day we were to consecrate this blood jade Pixiu. In my past life, right here in this spot, they had coaxed and tricked me into pricking my finger, feeding a willing drop of my own blood into the mouth of this cursed object. From that day on, Leo's business ventures took off. His success was meteoric, and within 3 years he was the new golden boy of the business world. Our whole family's status skyrocketed with him. We moved into a mansion, bought luxury cars, and my mother became a celebrated socialite, the envy of everyone in her circle. And me? My health declined day by day. The career I had worked so hard for years to build inexplicably collapsed. Finally, I vanished in an accident, not even leaving behind a handful of ashes. It was only in the last moments, as my consciousness faded, that I overheard their conversation. It turned out I was never family. I was just Leo's human blood bag, an endless offering for this Pixiu. My luck, my life, my everything, it had all been devoured by this insatiable beast, and converted into their wealth and glory. How ridiculous! How tragic! And now, I was sitting here again, as if history was about to repeat itself. "Anna, what are you spacing out for? Hurry up." Diane's voice turned sharp. I looked up, forcing a meek and timid smile onto my face. "Okay, Mom." I held out my right hand. My slender fingers looked almost transparent under the light. Diane nodded, satisfied. She handed me a sterilized silver needle, its sharp tip glinting coldly. Beneath the table, I quietly clenched my left fist. No one knew that hidden in the crevices of my fingernails was a fine, nearly invisible gray powder. It was a remnant from my cremation in my past life, a piece of me that had, for some reason, been reborn along with my soul. It was the only proof that I, Anna, had ever existed. I took the silver needle, drew a deep breath, and without hesitation, pricked the tip of my right index finger. A single, crimson drop of blood welled up instantly, plump, round, and disturbingly beautiful under the light. "Quick, drip it in," Leo urged, his eyes gleaming with undisguised greed. I did as I was told, moving my finger toward the Pixiu's mouth. Just as the drop was about to fall, my left hand flickered under the table. The powdered ash from my nails silently mixed into the blood. The drop fell, landing squarely in the Pixiu's open mouth. In that instant, the jade carving, once just a stone statue, seemed to come alive. A piercing red light erupted from within it, bathing the entire living room in a bloody glow. It wasn't an auspicious light. Instead, it carried an indescribable feeling of venom and chilling malice, as if some ferocious creature that had slumbered for 1,000 years had been awakened by my blood, now tainted with bone ash. Diane and Leo stumbled back a half step, stunned. But a moment later, their shock was replaced by wild joy. It worked! It worked! Diane's voice trembled with excitement. I knew that spiritual master wasn't lying. Leo, your lucky days are here. Leo's eyes shone. He carefully picked up the Pixiu charm, which had now returned to normal. It felt warm and smooth in his hand, but with an added, undefinable aura of malevolence. He eagerly hung it around his neck, tucking it under his shirt with a look of smug satisfaction. Anna, you did well this time, he said, giving me a rare nod of approval. When your big brother gets rich, I won't forget you. I kept my head down, a cold smile touching my lips. Forget me? When had they ever treated me well? In my last life. It devoured my flesh and blood to bring fortune to the entire family. This life, I used my own ashes as a catalyst to consecrate it with the light of death. Now let's see if a Pixiu that's been fed bone ash will keep devouring, or if it's time for it to start throwing up. Lost in their dreams of impending wealth, no one noticed a crack, finer than a strand of hair, silently appearing on the back of the blood jade Pixiu. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. The exhaustion from countless nightmare-plagued nights in my past life seemed to melt away. I didn't dream of cold hospital equipment or the loneliness of being slowly forgotten by the world. My mind was at peace. The rest of the family, however, did not sleep so well. The next morning, I was awakened by a piercing scream from downstairs. It was my mother, Diane. I calmly got dressed and went downstairs to find my mother slumped beside the garden's fish pond, her face ashen. The maid was trying to console her, at a complete loss. The pond was filled with a deathly, pale silence. The prized koi, which she had spent a fortune to fly in from Japan and treasured like the apple of her eye, were all floating belly up on the surface, a neat, ghostly armada. A few golden feathers floated on the water. They belonged to the canary she kept in a cage. The one she boasted could sing 18 different tunes. Now the expensive bird lay stiff at the bottom of its cage, completely silent. How could this happen? How could this happen? Diane muttered, utterly devastated. They were fine yesterday. How did they all die overnight? I walked over, putting on the perfect expression of shock and concern. Mom, what's wrong? Why would this happen out of the blue? How should I know? Diane snapped, turning her anger on me. Did you do something yesterday? You just can't stand to see this family do well, can you? I scoffed internally but kept a hurt and frightened look on my face. Mom, how can you say that? I was in my room the whole time. How could I have possibly hurt your precious koi and canary? The maid quickly chimed in. That's right, ma'am. Miss Anna didn't come downstairs at all after she got back yesterday. And the fish and the bird, they don't look like they were poisoned. It's almost as if they were scared to death. Scared to death. Diane's voice was so shrill it could have shattered glass. Just then, Leo stormed out of his study, his face livid. He was still in his pajamas, his hair a mess, and he was gripping his phone so tightly that the screen had cracked. It's over. It's all over, he roared, his eyes bloodshot. He stared at me as if he wanted to burn holes right through me. Anna, was it you jinx? Was it you? He rushed over and grabbed me by the collar. My stocks. The $2 million I invested in that stock. Just now, a black swan event hit the U.S. market right at the opening bell, and it plummeted. $2 million, gone in an instant. Hearing that number, Diane's vision went dark and she nearly fainted. I was dizzy from him shaking me, but I forced myself to stay calm, my voice catching in a sob. Brother, what are you talking about? How could I possibly affect the U.S. stock market? What does this have to do with me? What does it have to do with you? The day after you gave your blood, all this crap starts happening. If it wasn't you, who was it? Leo had lost all reason. Enough! Diane finally caught her breath and shouted at him. Leo, calm down. How could this possibly be Anna's fault? The consecration was clearly a success yesterday. That brilliant red light was an auspicious sign. It has to be a coincidence. Yes, it must be a coincidence. She said that, but as she looked at me, a shadow of suspicion lingered in her eyes. Leo was breathing heavily, but he finally let go of me. He glared at me like a wounded animal. For a man who worshipped money as much as he did, losing over $2 million overnight was like being bled dry. I straightened my disheveled clothes, kept my head down with my shoulders trembling slightly, and pretended to be terrified. Inside though, I was smiling coldly. This is only the beginning. Leo, the Pixiu contaminated by my ashes is no longer a divine beast of fortune that only takes in. It's become a malevolent creature, an insatiable demon. It will still devour, but now it will devour your luck, your health, your everything. And what it spits out will be endless disaster. I went back to my room and closed the door, shutting out the sounds of the tense argument and my mother's crying from downstairs. I walked to the window. The sunlight was warm and pleasant on my skin. I took out my phone and scrolled through the financial news. It was all about the Black Swan stock, just as I had expected. My gaze fell upon my vanity, where a family photo sat. In the picture, I was smiling sweetly, nestled against my mother. My mother and brother were beaming at the camera. A perfect, happy family. How ironic. I picked up the photo, my fingers gently tracing over their faces. My eyes finally settled on the faint outline of the pendant under Leo's shirt. I could almost see it, hidden beneath the expensive fabric. On the back of that blood jade Pixiu, the first invisible crack was radiating a chill straight from hell. Your good days are over. The atmosphere in the house was so heavy you could almost see it. The bodies of the koi and the canary were disposed of, but the stench of death seemed to have seeped into the very walls, refusing to leave. The $2 million Leo lost hung over everyone's head like a dark cloud. Diane was no longer interested in calling her friends over for mahjong and showing off. She became nervous and paranoid. She started suffering from insomnia, claiming she could hear strange noises in the middle of the night, like a cat scratching or a baby crying. Leo, meanwhile, practically lived at the office, working day and night trying to salvage the situation. But the harder he tried, the worse things got. Several deals that had been all but finalized were now stalled, with the other parties making all sorts of excuses to delay. This was all going according to my plan. The Pixiu's backlash was a gradual process. It would start with the things you care about most, slowly stripping away all your hopes and everything you rely on. One afternoon, Diane's gambling itch finally got the better of her, and she invited a few friends over for cards. I sat in the living room reading a book, but I was listening intently to the sounds from the game room. At first, it was all laughter and cheerful chatter, but gradually, the mood shifted. Oh, Diane, your luck is terrible today. What's going on? You keep losing every hand. Did you not sleep well? You seem out of it. Why would you play that card? Soon, Diane's exasperated voice came from the game room. I'm done. I'm done playing. My head is spinning. This is just my luck. A few moments later, she stormed out, her face grim. Her friends followed, wearing awkward smiles as they made their hasty goodbyes. One of them, a Mrs. Wallace who was her closest friend, pulled her aside before leaving and whispered, Diane, have you gotten on someone's bad side recently? Looking at you. You should probably go to a temple and pray. Diane's face turned completely black. She flopped onto the sofa across from me and reached for her teacup. But her hand was trembling so violently that half the tea sloshed out. I put down my book, walked over with a look of concern, helped her set the cup down, and handed her a napkin. Mom, what's wrong? You look so pale. Don't even ask, she snapped. I didn't win a single hand all afternoon. I lost over $200,000, and on top of that, I offended my most important connection. She rubbed her temples in frustration. It's so bizarre. I keep seeing things flash in front of my eyes. I can't even see the cards clearly. I knew exactly what was happening. The Pixiu was affecting her mind and judgment. I looked at her with feigned worry and said softly, Mom, you have such a dark aura around you lately, and the veins under your eyes are so prominent. Mrs. Wallace was right. Maybe you should go somewhere to pray and get rid of this bad luck. Diane froze, looking at me suspiciously. You know about this stuff? Not really. It's just something I've heard old folks say, I said, lowering my head, my voice barely a whisper. And ever since the koi died that day, I feel like the house has been so gloomy. My words were like a needle, striking the most sensitive and vulnerable part of her psyche. She was a firm believer in all things superstitious. Her expression shifted several times before she finally clenched her jaw. You're right. I need to do something to change my luck. You're coming with me to the jade market tomorrow. We'll find something to bring back and calm this place down. Okay, I replied obediently. My plan had worked. I needed her to walk into this trap all by herself. The next day, I accompanied a listless Diane to the city's largest jade market. The place was a chaotic mix of people from all walks of life. Diane made a beeline for the large, lavishly decorated shops, sneering at the small roadside stalls. But as we passed an unremarkable corner, I stopped. It was a tiny stall run by a white-haired old man in a faded, simple suit, who sat with his eyes closed in meditation. He didn't have much on display, but every piece had a rustic, ancient charm. My eyes were drawn to a string of Bodhi beads hanging at his stall. I was about to step forward when Diane impatiently pulled me back. What are you looking at this cheap junk for? Come on, let's go to the gilded jade up ahead. That's where the real treasures are. I had no choice but to follow her. But as I turned away, I saw the old man slowly open his eyes. His gaze was deep and sharp, as if he could see right through people. His eyes didn't land on me, but on someone just behind me who had just stepped out of a luxury car. Leo. He was clearly here for the same reason, seeking some way to turn his luck around. He was wearing the blood jade Pixiu today, perhaps hoping its spiritual energy could suppress his recent misfortune. The old man looked at the Pixiu on Leo's chest, and his brow furrowed instantly. My heart skipped a beat. I made an excuse to Diane and quickly doubled back to the stall. Sir, I said respectfully. The old man looked up at me, his gaze much softer now. Can I help you, young lady? I gestured in the direction Leo had gone and lowered my voice. Sir, were you looking at that man just now? The Pixiu he's wearing, is there something wrong with it? The old man gave me a long, searching look inside. Young lady, some things are not for you to ask. Just remember this. That thing is a cursed object. Anyone who gets involved with it will not come to a good end. A cursed object? I feigned surprise. But I heard that Pixius are auspicious beasts that bring wealth. Auspicious beasts? The old man scoffed, a glint of light flashing in his cloudy eyes. That depends on how they're nurtured. If you use righteous methods, they are auspicious. But if you use wicked and unorthodox ways, feeding it with the life force of your own blood relatives, then what you create is not an auspicious beast, but a life-claiming demon. My heart sank. My fingertips went cold. It was true. Then, what are the consequences? I asked, my voice trembling. Consequences? The old man shook his head. In the beginning, the one being nurtured by it will find everything going their way, their wealth growing. But the blood relative whose life force is being drained will suffer from all sorts of ailments and endless misfortune until the last spark of their life is extinguished. And in the later stages, when the offering's life force is completely drained, or if the cursed object is tainted by an even more powerful resentment, it will begin to strike back. It will spit out everything it ever swallowed with interest. The one it nurtured will eventually be drained dry and consumed, left with nothing and destined for a miserable end. The old man's words struck me like a sledgehammer. I fought to control the turmoil inside me and bowed deeply to him. Thank you, sir. I understand now. I turned and walked away, my mind a raging storm. I understood. I finally understood completely. I had fed it with the ashes from my past life, which contained the resentment and bitterness of my entire existence. That resentment far exceeded the evil the Pixiu itself could contain, which is why it had begun this frenzied backlash. I returned to the Gilded Jade, where Diane had already chosen an expensive golden toad statue and was about to pay. Leo was there too, laughing and chatting with the owner. I looked at them, my heart a block of ice. Still dreaming of getting rich? Too bad. Your life-claiming demon can't wait to start its feast. That encounter at the Jade Market confirmed that my plan was working. The old man I called Mr. Carter hadn't said it outright, but his sharp eyes and solemn warnings had verified the Pixiu's malevolent nature. More importantly, he taught me that this kind of dark magic, which involved sacrificing a blood relative, would have devastating consequences once it backfired. After we got home, Diane placed the golden toad in the most prominent spot in the living room, burning incense and praying to it daily as if that could reverse the family's decline. But things didn't get better, they got worse. First, at Leo's company, a critical server suddenly crashed, causing a massive loss of important data. Several ongoing projects had to be halted, resulting in direct financial losses of several $1,000,000. Then my mother's health began to fail. It wasn't just insomnia anymore. She started losing her hair in large clumps, and dark circles formed under her eyes. In just a few days, she looked haggard and frail. They were like two frogs being slowly boiled in warm water. At first, they only felt a little discomfort, but now they could clearly feel the lethal heat. Panic began to spread through the house. That night, I was reading in my room when the door was thrown open. Leo, reeking of alcohol, stormed in. His eyes were bloodshot, like an enraged bull. "Anna," he roared, snatching the book from my hands and slamming it on the floor. "Are you hiding something from us?" I looked up at him, perfectly calm. "Leo, you're drunk." "I'm not drunk," he bellowed, his spit flying. "Ever since you gave your blood to that Pixiu, not a single good thing has happened in this house. Tell me the truth, did you do something to it that day?" His suspicion, once vague, was now sharp and direct. I stood up and looked him straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering, filled only with innocence and hurt. "Leo, what could I have possibly done? I gave one drop of blood, right in front of you and Mom. If you don't believe me, you can tie me up and take my blood again. See if it makes any difference." My confidence seemed to make him hesitate. It was true. In his eyes, I had always been the weak, submissive little sister, completely without guile. He couldn't imagine me fighting back. He was at a loss for words. Just then, Diane rushed in, drawn by the noise. Seeing the scene, she immediately pulled Leo away, shielding me behind her as she scolded him. "What's wrong with you? Yelling at your sister like this? She's just a girl. What could she possibly know about dark magic?" Although she was also suspicious, she needed to maintain a facade of peace in the family until she had concrete proof. She still needed me, her offering, to stay put. "Mom, don't let her fool you. Something is very wrong here," Leo said, unwilling to back down. "That's enough," Diane said sharply. "I will find a way to solve this. Your job right now is to stabilize the company and not let outsiders see the chaos in our family." Leo, finally persuaded to calm down, shot me a venomous look before turning and slamming the door behind him. The room fell silent again. Diane looked at me, her expression complicated. She sighed, her tone softening. "Anna, don't blame your brother. He's just under a lot of pressure. With all the trouble at the company, he's on edge. Have you been feeling all right lately?" I sneered internally. She wasn't concerned about me, she was checking the quality of her offering. I shook my head, my voice soft. "I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry." "Good, that's good." She patted my hand and turned to leave. I watched her go, knowing they were standing on the edge of a cliff. They wouldn't stop. They would only resort to more desperate measures to salvage their greed. All I had to do was wait for them to jump. The next day, I made an excuse to go to the Jade Market again. I found Mr. Carter's stall. "Mr. Carter." I handed him a cup of hot tea. He glanced at me and took the cup but didn't drink. "You're back. I wanted to ask for your advice on something," I said earnestly. He was silent for a moment, as if considering, then pointed to a small stool beside him. "Seat." I vaguely described Leo's string of misfortunes and the strange occurrences at home, framing it as the experience of a friend. After I finished, Mr. Carter let out a long sigh. "A tragic fate. That Pixiu has grown powerful. Right now, it's only striking back at their wealth and the peace of their home. The next step will be to take their lives." My heart tightened. Take their lives. That's right. Mr. Carter's expression grew serious. This kind of evil object, sustained by the life force of a blood relative, will not rest until its host is dead. It will first make the nurtured one deserted by friends and family, then disgraced and ruined, and finally, it will take their life, leaving them to die in endless pain and regret. I took a deep breath, suppressing the turmoil within me. Is there any way to break the curse? Mr. Carter shook his head. It's difficult. The inner demon has been born, the evil object has been formed, unless a greater external force intervenes to destroy it completely. But who can say what the karmic consequences of that would be? Young lady, I advise you to stay away from your friend. lest you get caught in the crossfire." I thanked him again and left. On the way home, my heart was heavy. Mr. Carter's words made me realize that this revenge was far more dangerous than I had imagined. I not only had to make them pay for what they did, but I also had to ensure I could escape the storm unscathed. I needed a plan, a more thorough one. I couldn't rely solely on the Pixiu's backlash. I had to create my own escape route. I opened my phone and started searching for names and businesses I once knew but had deliberately forgotten. Though my past life ended tragically, I wasn't entirely helpless. I had a remarkable talent for finance and had once built my own network and career. All of that would be my capital for this life's counterattack. Go on, Pixiu, keep spitting it all out. As for me, I'm going to start taking back what's mine. The Pixiu's backlash was like a silent virus, beginning to corrode this seemingly glamorous family from the inside out. Leo's temper became increasingly volatile, like a lit powder keg ready to explode at the slightest spark. One day, I went downstairs for water just as his secretary arrived to deliver some documents. For a minor formatting error in a file, the young woman was viciously berated by Leo in front of everyone. He even threw a thick stack of papers directly at her face. The girl ran out crying, while the other employees stood by with expressions of silent rage. I watched, feeling nothing. In my past life, he was just like this, attributing all success to himself and blaming others for every failure. Now that his luck was stolen, the facade of a business elite was simply peeling away sooner than expected. The company's reputation plummeted because of his outbursts, and several key employees began quietly looking for new jobs. The collapse of a business often begins with the loss of its people. My mother Diane's situation was even stranger. It wasn't just insomnia anymore, she began to have auditory and visual hallucinations. She kept saying she saw a little girl in a red dress running around the house, smiling at her. She also heard whispers in her ear, muttering curses. She hired several so-called masters to cleanse the house, but they all just took her money and left, having accomplished nothing. The atmosphere at home grew even more sinister and terrifying. I used this time to focus entirely on my own plans. I locked myself in my room, pretending to hide from the bad luck in the house. In reality, I was reacquainting myself with the knowledge and memories of my past life. I was once a top-certified public accountant, intimately familiar with the financial operations of public companies. Leo's company, Apex Innovations, looked prosperous on the surface, but I knew that to expand rapidly, he had used many legally gray methods. The financial statements were riddled with inconsistencies. These were his fatal Achilles heel. Relying on my memory, I began to compile a detailed report on the financial loopholes of Apex. Every number and every entry clear in my mind. This wasn't just revenge, it was me reclaiming justice for the past self whose hard work and ideas he had stolen. Besides compiling the report, I also started exercising regularly. In my past life, my body had become too weak from having my life force drained, leaving me powerless in the final crisis. This time, I would not let myself repeat that mistake. I ran in the park every morning and did yoga in my room in the evening. I needed to make my body and will strong enough to face the coming storm. The days passed in this strange state of quiet turmoil. Finally, the fuse was lit. It was at Leo's engagement party. His fiancée was Laura Hayes, the daughter of another major corporation in the city. For Apex, which was already in turmoil, this marriage alliance was a life-saving injection of capital and confidence. The party was held at the city's most luxurious five-star hotel, packed with distinguished guests and socialites. Leo wore a white tuxedo, looking dashing and confident, as if all his recent bad luck had vanished. He stood on stage, microphone in hand, about to deliver his heartfelt speech. As a family member, I sat in an inconspicuous corner, watching coldly. Just then, the ballroom doors were thrown open. Laura's father, Mr. Hayes, chairman of Hayes Industries, strode in with a group of bodyguards, his face dark as a storm cloud. The entire room erupted in murmurs. "Mr. Hayes, what is this?" The smile on Leo's face froze. Mr. Hayes ignored him, walked directly onto the stage, snatched the microphone from his hand, and addressed the guests. "Everyone, I've invited you all here today to announce something." He paused, his eyes like daggers aimed at Leo. The engagement between my daughter, Laura, and Leo is officially cancelled, effective today. The announcement hit the room like a bombshell. Leo's face turned deathly pale. Mr. Hayes, what kind of joke is this? I'm not joking. Mr. Hayes cut him off coldly. Leo, those overseas projects you invested in? They all went bust overnight. A total loss. Your so-called business genius is nothing but a joke. Did you really think you could drag my family down into the fire with you? But that wasn't all. Laura followed him onto the stage. She looked at Leo with utter disgust and contempt. She took out her phone, played a video, and projected it onto the large screen behind them. The video showed Leo in various compromising situations with several different women, the images explicit and revolting. Leo, you liar. You hypocrite. Laura's voice trembled with rage. You wanted to marry me while you were messing around behind my back? You make me sick. The room fell into a dead silence. Every eye was on Leo, a mixture of shock, disgust, and schadenfreude. Diane's vision went black, and she fainted on the spot. Leo stood there, his face shifting from pale to purple, then to a deathly gray. Everything he was proud of, his career, his love life, his reputation, was torn to shreds and trampled underfoot in that single moment. I knew this was the second phase of the Pixiu's backlash. It was starting to strip away his connections, leaving him disgraced and alone. I sat in my corner, raised my glass of champagne, and took a small sip. The champagne was sweet, with a hint of vengeful satisfaction. The show was just getting started. The fiasco at the engagement party swept through high society, like a Category 5 hurricane. The next day, headlines like, Apex Air's engagement cancelled mid-party, business empire on brink of collapse, dominated the front pages of financial and gossip magazines. Leo's business genius persona shattered completely, replaced by labels like liar, cheater, and all flash, no substance. The company's stock price plummeted. Business partners began pulling out of deals, and banks started calling in their loans. The once bustling family mansion was now deserted. Even the maid found an excuse to quit. Diane never recovered after fainting that day. Her spirit was broken. She locked herself in her room, refusing to eat or drink, constantly muttering, "It's over, it's all over." Her hair turned visibly gray, and she seemed to age 20 years overnight. Leo, meanwhile, paced the house like a caged animal, smashing things and roaring curses. He cursed the Hayes family for their betrayal, cursed his partners for abandoning him, and finally, he focused all his rage on me. That afternoon, he kicked my door open. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a predator ready to pounce. "Tell me, what is going on?" He grabbed me by the collar and slammed me against the wall. The blood jade Pixiu around his neck swung wildly, glinting with an eerie red light. "Was it you? Were you pulling strings behind the scenes? How did the Hayes family know the specifics of my projects? And those videos, who filmed them?" The wall was cold against my back. But looking at his face, twisted with rage and fear, I felt no fear at all, only a sick sense of pleasure. "Brother, what are you talking about?" "I don't understand," I said, maintaining my mask of fragile innocence. "I'm just a girl who stays home all day. How could I have that kind of power?" "Stop playing dumb," he roared. "All this trouble started right after you gave your blood to the Pixiu. You're a jinx." His hand tightened around my neck. I could barely breathe. Just then Diane rushed in. She screamed at the sight and clawed at Leo's arm. "Leo, are you crazy? Are you trying to kill your sister?" "She's not my sister. She's a curse." Leo had completely lost his mind. "Shut up." Diane shoved him away with all her might. She stood in front of me, her eyes filled with disappointment and pain as she looked at Leo. "Things have gotten this bad, and instead of trying to fix the problem, you're taking it out on your own family. How did I raise such a useless son?" Her words seemed to stun Leo. He slumped to the floor, holding his head in his hands, and let out a choked, animalistic sob. He had never experienced such a catastrophic failure. His entire world was collapsing. I leaned against the wall, gasping for air, a clear red mark already forming on my neck. I watched the scene of mother and son tearing each other apart and sneered inwardly. "So now you remember I'm your family? When you were using me as a sacrifice, did you ever hesitate for even a second?" After calming Leo down, Diane turned to me. Her gaze was complex and sharp, as if she were trying to see right through me. Anna, she said slowly, her voice hoarse, tell Mom the truth. That day, when you consecrated the Pixiu, did you do anything else? The masks were off. They were finally pointing their suspicion directly at me. I met her gaze and shook my head, my eyes clear and honest. Mom, I didn't. If there was anything different, it's that I was on my period that day. I wasn't feeling well. Maybe my blood wasn't clean enough. I deliberately steered the conversation toward something mystical and unverifiable. I knew that for believers like them, this kind of unprovable speculation was far more convincing than a simple denial. Just as I expected, Diane's expression changed. She muttered to herself, blood wasn't clean, not enough. Leo's head shot up. He looked as if he'd just found a lifeline, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. Yes, that must be it. The offering was tainted. The blood wasn't pure, so the Pixiu didn't bless me. Instead he didn't dare finish the sentence. Diane's eyes grew fanatical. She grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Anna, my good daughter, you have to help your brother one more time. We'll try again. This time, we'll use more blood. It will definitely work. I looked at her face, twisted by greed and fear, and felt a wave of nausea. This was my mother. For the sake of her son, she would push me into the abyss again and again without a second thought. I pretended to shrink back in fear, my voice trembling. Mom, I'm scared. Don't be scared, Anna. Mom's here. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were like a venomous snake's. Mom won't let anything happen to you. This is for the good of our family. Think about it. If your brother falls, this whole family is finished. What kind of future would you have then? She was back to her old emotional blackmail. Too bad for her, I wasn't falling for it this time. I lowered my head, feigning submission, while a cold smile played on my lips. You think the blood wasn't pure enough? No. It's your greed that will never be satisfied. So bring it on. Let's see what other insane, inhuman things you're willing to do to fill this bottomless pit. After they stumbled upon the theory of my unclean blood, my mother Diane and brother Leo latched onto it as the source of all their troubles. Their suspicion morphed into a fanatical obsession, convinced that a purer, more powerful sacrifice could reverse their fate and make the malevolent Pixiu bless them once more. My submission and fear seemed perfectly natural to them. They were used to me giving whatever they asked, accustomed to treating my sacrifices as their birthright. A more absurd and vicious plan began to form in the ruins of our family. They no longer trusted street corner mystics. Through more secretive channels, they contacted a man known as Master Diaz, who was said to possess immense spiritual power. This master was elusive, rumored to solve special problems only for the ultra-wealthy. After paying an exorbitant consultation fee, Master Diaz finally agreed to grace our home with his presence. On that day, the house was clean, spotless. Diane even burned the most expensive incense. At 3 in the afternoon, a black Rolls-Royce pulled up silently to the mansion's gate. Master Diaz stepped out. He looked to be in his 40s, dressed in a flowing silk tunic with a small goatee, projecting the air of an otherworldly sage. The moment he stepped inside, he frowned slightly, pinched his fingers together as if performing a calculation, and said gravely, "The negative energy in this house is very strong." Diane and Leo immediately treated him like a savior, ushering him to the seat of honor. They recounted all the strange events that had plagued their family, and the origin of the blood jade Pixiu. Master Diaz picked up the Pixiu, weighed it in his palm, and his expression grew heavier. He walked a circle around the living room, his gaze finally landing on me. His eyes, though they appeared cloudy, seemed to possess a power that could pierce through one's soul. I felt a deep unease and instinctively avoided his gaze. "The problem lies with this Pixiu and this young lady," Master Diaz said slowly. His voice was not loud, but it struck everyone's heart like a hammer. "Master, what do you mean?" Diane asked anxiously. Master Diaz stroked his goatee, his expression inscrutable. "This Pixiu was created using dark arts. It is a cursed object by nature, sustained by devouring the life force of a blood relative and extremely aggressive magic. But what's worse is that during the first consecration, The offering's bloodline clashed with the Pixiu's resentment. Instead of pacifying it, this clash amplified its malevolence, causing it to strike back with ferocious intensity. His explanation mirrored what Mr. Carter had told me, but hearing it from him added a layer of grim, fated certainty. Leo's face went pale. Master, then, what do we do now? Is there any way to break the curse? Master Diaz remained silent for a long time before finally saying, There is a way, but it is extremely dangerous and requires this young lady to make a great sacrifice. All eyes instantly turned to me. A bone-deep chill washed over me. Diane spoke without a moment's hesitation. Master, please tell us. As long as it can save Leo and our family, Anna will do anything. Look at that. She didn't even ask what the great sacrifice was. I sneered internally, my face a mask of fear and anxiety. Only then did Master Diaz nod, satisfied, and reveal his truly wicked plan. The one who tied the bell must be the one to untie it. Since the backlash was triggered by a clash of bloodlines, it must be suppressed by an even more powerful bloodline force. He looked at me, his gaze as cold as if I were a lifeless object. We will need 3 drops of this young lady's heart's blood, combined with a secret ritual, to reconsecrate this Pixiu. After nurturing it with heart's blood for 49 days, its malevolence will be suppressed, and it will accept its master once more. Heart's blood. My body went rigid, as if I'd been plunged into ice water. Taking heart's blood could be fatal. Diane and Leo were stunned, clearly not expecting the price to be so high. But after a mere moment of hesitation, greed triumphed over their last shred of humanity. The flame of hope reignited in Leo's eyes. He looked at me with an expression that was both a plea and an undeniable command. Diane grabbed my hand, her nails digging into my flesh, but her voice was sickeningly gentle. Anna, did you hear that? Only you can save your brother. Only you can save our family. Don't worry, the master is powerful. He said it's just 3 drops of blood, it won't be life-threatening. You're willing to do it, right? I looked at their faces, twisted and ugly with their selfish desires, and felt a wave of disgust and sorrow. Willing? Of course I'm not willing. I violently shook off her hand and stumbled backward, my voice shrill with terror. No, I won't do it. You're trying to kill me. I won't. My reaction seemed to catch them by surprise. They never imagined that the ever-obedient me would dare to resist. Leo's face darkened instantly. Anna, don't be ungrateful. I'm the one holding this family up. If I fall, do you think you'll have a good life? I don't want to die, I sobbed, shaking my head. It's just 3 drops of blood, you won't die. Diane snapped, her mask of kindness completely gone. I gave you your life. Now you dare to refuse when the family needs you to contribute? Let me tell you, this is not up for discussion. Seeing their true, monstrous faces, I knew there was no point in pretending anymore. At that moment, my heart died completely. I no longer had a shred of attachment to this so-called family, to these so-called relatives. Since you've shown me no mercy, don't blame me for being ruthless. I wiped my tears and looked at them, my eyes showing a calm resolve they had never seen before. Fine, I said. I'll do it. They were stunned, not expecting me to yield so quickly. I continued, but I have one condition. What condition? I want to move out, I said, word by word. I'm scared. I don't want to stay in this gloomy house anymore. You'll give me some money and find me an apartment. When the time comes, you can come find me. Otherwise, I'd rather jump from this balcony right now, and we can all go down together. My determination shocked them. They exchanged a look, weighing their options. Finally, to keep their most important offering in line, they agreed. After I demanded to move out, Diane and Leo, though reluctant, ultimately agreed. They needed my heart's blood to have any chance of a comeback. To them, the worst-case scenario was me, their only offering, having an accident. They moved quickly. The next day, they rented a high-end apartment for me downtown and gave me $500,000, calling it living expenses. In reality, it was just hush money to keep me compliant. I held the bank card, a cold smile on my face. They probably thought that money and a little temporary freedom would be enough to make me wait patiently for my own slaughter. They didn't know me at all. Then again, they had never tried. Leaving that suffocating mansion, even the air felt fresher. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my new apartment, looking down at the city's bustling streets. I felt no attachment to that house, only the relief of escaping a cage and a clear vision for the future. I knew the time I'd bought myself was critical. First, I needed to verify the background of the so-called Master Diaz. I used a portion of the $500,000 to hire a professional private investigation agency. Their task was simple: find out who the sage like Master Diaz really was. Second, I needed to find the most powerful ally for my counterattack. My target was Leo's biggest business rival, Julian Vance, the CEO of Vance Industries. In my past life, it was Julian who ultimately brought down Leo's empire. Julian was known for being low-key but ruthless, a smiling tiger in the business world. Most importantly, like me, he despised Leo. Years ago, Leo had used underhanded tactics to steal a major project from Vance Industries, which became the foundation of his success. I encrypted the report I'd compiled on Apex Innovations' financial loopholes and sent it anonymously to Julian's private email. The subject line read, "A priceless gift for an old friend of Leo's." I left no contact information. I was confident that a man as sharp as Julian would recognize the report's value and find a way to contact me. After taking care of those two things, I finally allowed myself to relax. For the next few days, I ignored everything related to my family and started living for myself. I went to the mall and bought beautiful clothes I'd never allowed myself to have, dined at fine restaurants, and worked out at the gym. I even went back to the jade market and found Mr. Carter. I bought the string of Bodhi beads I'd admired and asked for his advice again. Mr. Carter didn't seem surprised to see me. He told me that charlatans like Master Diaz were experts at exploiting people's greed and fear, using exaggeration to set their traps. The heart's blood ritual was complete nonsense, designed only to extort more money or to satisfy some twisted desire for control. "Young lady," Mr. Carter said kindly, "you look much better than the last time I saw you. It seems you've figured things out. Remember, praying to gods is not as effective as relying on yourself. True strength comes from within." I bowed deeply to him. I knew he was guiding me. Leaving his stall, I felt my resolve harden. Sure enough, 3 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. A deep, magnetic male voice said, "Is this Miss Anna?" "This is she." "Who's calling?" "This is Julian Vance." My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my voice steady. "Mr. Vance, hello. I've read what you sent me," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "It's brilliant. I think we should meet." All right. We met at a private tea house. Julian was younger than I'd expected, maybe in his early 30s, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit. He had a refined air, but his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. He skipped the pleasantries. "Your terms." "My terms are simple." I pushed a cup of tea toward him. "First, after you bring down Leo and his company, I want my share. The idea for his first major project, the one that launched his career, was mine." "Done," he agreed without hesitation. "Second," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "I want them ruined. I want them to lose everything." A flicker of surprise crossed Julian's face, quickly replaced by understanding. A slow, knowing smile spread across his lips. "It seems we're kindred spirits. A pleasure doing business with you." We smiled at each other. Nothing more needed to be said. As I left the tea house, the sun was shining. I felt as if a great weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Just when I thought everything was moving in the right direction, my phone rang. It was the private investigator. "Miss Anna, we found something on that Master Diaz. It's alarming." The voice on the other end was grim. "Tell me." "This Master Diaz's real name is Ricardo Diaz. He's no spiritual master, he's a con artist with a long rap sheet. His specialty is using superstition to manipulate and defraud wealthy individuals on the verge of bankruptcy or in the midst of a crisis." "But what's truly terrifying," the investigator paused, lowering his voice, "is that among his previous clients, there have been several cases of family members dying or disappearing under mysterious circumstances. The police suspect his involvement, but have never found any direct evidence." My heart sank. I had underestimated how dangerous this was. Master Diaz wasn't just after money, he was a venomous snake, and my mother and brother had already welcomed him into their home. I had to accelerate my plan. The news from the private investigator was a bucket of ice water, snapping me out of my vengeful high. I realized I wasn't just dealing with my greedy, foolish family, but also a ruthless con man who likely had blood on his hands. Master Diaz's goal was clearly more than just money. His heart's blood ritual was an elaborate trap, probably designed to create an accidental death, so he could gain control of the family's assets. I couldn't afford to wait for them to come for me. I had to go on the offensive and disrupt their plans. That evening, I called Diane. The moment she answered, before she could say a word, I started screaming into the phone, my voice trembling with terror. Mom, help me. I don't want to die. That Master Diaz, he's a con artist. Diane was clearly thrown off. Anna, what are you talking about? What con artist? I looked him up. It's all over the internet. I continued, my voice choked with fake sobs. Taking heart's blood isn't to save someone, it's for performing the most wicked kind of dark magic. Mom, he wants me dead. He doesn't want to save Leo, he wants to destroy our entire family. I didn't mention the PI, attributing everything to an online search. It allowed me to deliver the information without revealing my hand. There was silence on the other end. I could almost picture the storm of emotions on Diane's face. Given her paranoid nature, my words would surely plant a seed of doubt. Don't be ridiculous, she finally snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. Master Diaz is a man of great power. How could he be a con artist? Stop reading that nonsense online. I don't believe you. I'm scared. I cried even louder. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm leaving this city, and none of you will ever find me. I won't be your sacrifice. With that, I slammed the phone down and immediately turned it off. I needed them to believe I was on the verge of a complete breakdown, about to slip from their grasp. I knew the one thing they feared most was me running away, because with me gone, so was their last hope of a comeback. They would do anything to keep me under control. Sure enough, early the next morning, my apartment doorbell began ringing incessantly. Through the peephole, I saw Diane and Leo standing outside, their faces etched with anxiety. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called out in a weak, wary voice. What are you doing here? I'm not going back with you. Anna, open the door. Mom needs to talk to you. Diane's voice was a mix of urgency and anger. No, I yelled back. You just want to drag me back so that charlatan can kill me. We were at a standoff for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Leo lost his patience. Anna, what the hell do you want? He roared, kicking the door. I smirked. This was the moment I was waiting for. What do I want? I said, my voice cold and clear through the door. I want you to get rid of Master Diaz. I never want to see him again. If you don't, I'm calling the police right now and telling them you're involved in some superstitious cult and planning to physically harm me. The threat of the police was their weak spot. None of what they were doing could stand the light of day. Silence again. After a long pause, Diane's tired voice came through. Fine, Anna. Don't do anything rash. We will listen to you. Just open the door so we can talk properly. I pretended to hesitate before cracking the door open. Seeing that I was safe, they both let out a visible sigh of relief. Anna, listen to Mom, Diane said, forcing a smile that was uglier than a grimace. We were just desperate. Since you don't trust Master Diaz, we will find another way. Just please don't do anything foolish. Really? I asked, looking at them with suspicion. Leo quickly added, as long as you behave, we promise we won't let Master Diaz bother you again. I looked at their deceitful faces, knowing this was just a stalling tactic. They would never give up on the heart's blood ritual. But a stalling tactic was exactly what I needed. I pretended to be convinced and nodded, but I didn't let them in. You should go. I need to be alone. They exchanged a look. Though reluctant, they had no choice but to leave for now. The moment they were gone, I turned on my phone and called Julian Vance. Julian, the fish are getting desperate. We can get ready to pull in the net. On the other end, Julian chuckled. Excellent. I'm ready on my end. I had successfully used their panic to buy myself precious time. and the upper hand. They thought they had temporarily pacified me. What they didn't know was that a net, one big enough to bury them completely, was already closing in. Now it was time to pull the rug out from under them. After successfully using an emotional outburst to temporarily ward off my family and Master Diaz, I didn't relax for a second. I knew it was just the calm before the storm. Diane and Leo's compromise was merely a prelude to a more vicious attack. I had to act before they did and finalize all my plans. First, I personally delivered the detailed report on Apex Innovations' financial crimes to Julian Vance. In that familiar tea house, Julian looked at the thick stack of documents with genuine shock. "Anna, I have to admit, I underestimated you," he said, flipping through the pages. Each one contained evidence that could utterly destroy Apex. "How did you get all this?" "That's not important, Julian," I said calmly. "What's important is that it's all yours now. I only have one condition. When Apex collapses, I want every single one of its dirty secrets exposed. I want everyone to see what kind of man their so-called business genius really is." Julian closed the folder and looked at me intently. He didn't ask any more questions, just nodded. "Don't worry. I'll make sure it's the most spectacular fireworks show they've ever seen." At that moment, our alliance was truly sealed. We had a common enemy and the weapon to destroy him. After leaving the tea house, I immediately moved on to the second phase of my plan. I contacted a former classmate from my past life who was now the editor-in-chief of the city's most influential media outlet. Promising him the scoop of a lifetime, I arranged a meeting. The media had been circling the scandal-ridden family like sharks, hungry for an inside source. I gave him the videos from the engagement party. Along with new evidence, I had the PI gather about Leo's chaotic personal life. "When the time is right, I want to see this on everyone's phone," I told my old friend. He looked at the evidence, his eyes gleaming. "Anna, don't you worry," he promised. "When I get the signal, I'll make Leo's name 100 times more toxic than it already is." The weapon of public opinion was now armed and ready. Finally, the most important step: self-preservation. I went back to the Jade Market to see Mr. Carter. This time, I told him everything, the danger I was in and the existence of Master Diaz. Mr. Carter's face grew incredibly grave. "Young lady, you are in real trouble this time," he sighed. "That Ricardo Diaz, I've heard of him. He's a vicious man. Years ago, he studied under a dark arts master in Southeast Asia and learned some truly horrifying things. The people he targets end up either dead or disabled. You are in extreme danger." My heart sank. "Mr. Carter, what should I do?" Mr. Carter thought for a long time before pulling an old wooden box from under his stall. Inside lay a simple protective amulet carved from peach wood. "A master gave this to me when I was young. I've worn it ever since," he said, handing it to me. "It may not be able to stop every disaster, but in a critical moment, it might just save your life. Keep it on you at all times." I took the amulet, still warm from his touch, and felt a wave of gratitude. In this cold world, such kindness from a stranger was incredibly precious. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," I said sincerely. "Go on," he said with a wave of his hand. "Remember, good will always triumph over evil. As long as you hold on to your integrity, you will get through this." I put on the amulet, feeling a new sense of calm and strength. All my preparations were complete. The trap I had set for them was now in place. All I had to do was wait for them to think the time was right to make their final move. That day would be their judgment day. I didn't have to wait long. About a week later, I got a call from Diane. Her voice was unusually sweet and loving, almost pleading. "Anna dear, are you home? Mom hasn't been feeling well lately, my chest feels so tight. Your brother is so busy, and it's so lonely here by myself. Could you come visit?" Listening to her flimsy lies, I smiled coldly. The time had come. "Mom, what's wrong? Should I call an ambulance?" I asked, my voice filled with fake panic. No, she said quickly. "It's just my old ailment. I'll feel better if you just come talk to me. I made your favorite soup." "Okay," I said after a pause, my tone conveying hesitation and a hint of reluctant sympathy. After hanging up, my expression turned to ice. I picked up my phone and sent 2 separate texts. one to Julian and one to my editor friend. The message was simple, just 2 words. It's time. Then I straightened my clothes, took a deep breath, and walked out of my apartment. The mansion I once called home now looked like a cage waiting for its prey to walk right in. And I was the hunter, about to slam the door shut myself. When I stepped back into that familiar mansion, a heavy, eerie atmosphere hit me. The living room was dark, the curtains drawn tight, with only a few dim wall sconces casting a ghostly light. The air was thick with the scent of sandalwood, a cloying attempt to mask something else. Diane stood up from the sofa, a fake smile plastered on her face. Anna, you're back. Come, I made you soup. It's still warm. I looked at her. She was more haggard than the last time I'd seen her, with dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze held a strange, feverish glint. Leo came down from upstairs. He had lost weight, his eyes sunken, but he seemed calmer than before, the sick, unnatural calm before a storm. He even managed a stiff smile. Anna, it's good you're back. My eyes scanned the room. Master Diaz was nowhere to be seen, but I knew he was lurking somewhere in this house, like a snake waiting to strike. Mom, I'm not here for soup, I said, my voice sharp with feigned anxiety. You said you weren't feeling well. What's wrong? Oh, it's nothing. Just my old problems. Seeing you has already made me feel so much better. Diane grabbed my hand, trying to pull me toward the sofa. Her hand was as cold as iron. I subtly pulled away. Leo, how's the company? I saw in the news that. Before I could finish, Leo cut me off, a dark look flashing in his eyes. You don't need to worry about the company. You just need to stay here. That was the signal. I immediately turned to leave. I just remembered I have something to do. I have to go. Stop. Leo lunged forward, blocking my path. The friendly facade was gone, replaced by a vicious snarl. Diane grabbed me from behind, her grip surprisingly strong. Anna, don't go. My dear daughter, just help the family one more time. The last time. Their true intentions were finally revealed. Just then, a sinister voice drifted down from the top of the stairs. Since you've come all this way, Miss Anna, why be in such a hurry to leave? Master Diaz, dressed in a long black robe, descended the stairs slowly. He held a black porcelain bowl containing a viscous, unknown liquid that gave off a nauseating, fishy smell. My heart sank. I had expected them to make a move, but not so directly, so violently. What are you doing? I screamed, struggling with all my might. Let me go. Help. Don't waste your energy, Leo sneered, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket and pressing it over my mouth and nose. A sharp, sweet smell filled my lungs. My head spun, and my limbs went weak. The last thing I saw before my vision went dark was Diane's face, twisted by greed and madness, and the triumphant, cold smile on Master Diaz's lips. I was a bird in their cage, awaiting the final sacrifice. When I woke up, I was in my old bedroom, my hands and feet bound with thick rope. The door was locked from the outside, and the window was boarded up, shutting out any sliver of light. I was trapped in complete darkness and isolation. These were my relatives. For their own selfish desires, they had imprisoned me, ready to push me into the abyss of death. A chill colder than the dark room seeped into my bones, a chill born from the death of humanity. But after the initial fear, an extreme calm took over. This was part of the plan, the darkest moment before the dawn. They thought they were in control. They didn't realize that by locking me in this cage, they had started the countdown to their own doom. I closed my eyes and began to wait in the darkness, waiting for the net I had cast to finally close, waiting for Judgment Day. In the darkness of my prison, time lost all meaning. I didn't know if a day had passed or 2. The room was deathly silent, save for the sound of my own breathing. They would slide some food and water through a slot in the door at regular intervals, ensuring their offering didn't die of starvation before the ritual. My body was numb and sore from being tied up, but my mind was sharper than ever. I replayed my entire plan in my head, making sure there were no flaws. Julian should have already launched his final financial assault on Apex. My editor friend should have his bombshells ready to drop. And I was the trigger, the final fuse to ignite it all. I had to stay alive until they brought me to their so-called altar. One day, I finally heard footsteps outside the door. It was Diane arguing with Leo. Do we really have to go that far? She is my daughter after all. Her voice held a rare hint of hesitation. Mom, now is not the time for sentimentality. Leo's voice was harsh and cold. Master Diaz said this is the only way to truly change our fate. It's either her or our entire family. You choose. The argument faded as they walked away, but my heart sank. Go that far. It seemed Master Diaz's plan was even more vicious than just heart's blood. They really were going to kill me. A powerful will to survive surged through me, and I began to struggle against the ropes with renewed desperation. They were tied tight, and my wrists were quickly rubbed raw, the skin breaking and stinging. Just as I was about to lose hope, my fingertips brushed against something hard and cool. My heart leaped. It was my old phone. After I was captured, one of the first contingencies I had prepared for was to have hidden an old, spare phone in a slit I'd cut in the mattress of this bed. It was so well hidden I had almost forgotten it myself. Now, at this critical moment, it was my lifeline. Fighting back a wave of relief, I used my raw, bleeding fingers to painstakingly work the phone out of its hiding place. Miraculously, it still had a charge. I huddled under the blanket, using my body to shield the screen's faint glow, and with trembling fingers, powered it on. When the screen lit up, I almost cried. I immediately sent a text to Julian. Imprisoned. Move tomorrow at noon. Close the net. Message sent. With that done, I let out a long breath, feeling completely drained. But I knew I couldn't relax yet. I turned on the phone's voice recorder and tucked it back into the mattress. If the worst happened, all their conversations in the coming hours would become ironclad evidence against them. Then, I opened a backup email account. The PI's final report was sitting there. It detailed all of Ricardo Diaz's Master Diaz's criminal history, including case files from the mysterious deaths of his previous clients' family members. The details of one case made my blood run cold. Before I could finish reading, I heard footsteps approaching the door again. 3 sets this time. The lock turned. Leo, Diane, and the black-robed Master Diaz entered. In his hands, Master Diaz held a tray. On it rested a single, gleaming dagger. They looked at me with cold, detached eyes, as if I were a lamb for the slaughter. The auspicious time has arrived, Master Diaz said in his sinister voice. We can begin. Master Diaz's sinister voice echoed in the silent room like the hiss of a venomous snake. Leo stepped forward, his earlier agitation replaced by a dead, empty calm. He expertly dragged me from the bed, the ropes digging painfully into the raw wounds on my wrists. Diane followed, her face as white as a sheet, her lips trembling. She said nothing, merely helping her son lead me, the daughter she had carried for 10 months, step by step to the sacrificial altar. They took me to the basement. It had been converted into a crude, grotesque ritual chamber. Strange symbols were drawn on the floor in what looked like cinnabar. In the center stood a small altar, and upon it sat the blood-red Pixiu. Its surface was now covered in a web of fine cracks, looking as if it might shatter at any moment. But its greedy, open mouth was still pointed at me, radiating a sickeningly evil aura. Master Diaz forced me onto the floor in the center of the chamber, my head facing the Pixiu. He picked up the gleaming dagger from the tray and handed it to Leo. Remember, be quick and precise, Master Diaz said, his voice laced with an unnatural excitement. Only the freshest heart's blood can satisfy it. Only then will it spit back all the good fortune it has swallowed, multiplied. Leo took the dagger, his hand trembling slightly. He looked at me, his eyes a storm of greed and fear, but utterly devoid of any familial love or guilt. Anna, don't blame me, he muttered, as if trying to convince himself. You owe me this. You owe this family. I stared back at him, at the dagger he raised to plunge into my heart, and felt a strange sense of peace. All my pieces were in place. My part was done. The rest was up to fate. Just as the sharp tip of the blade was about to touch my skin, bang! With a tremendous crash, the basement door was blasted off its hinges. Blinding sunlight and the powerful beams of dozens of flashlights flooded the dark, evil space, illuminating it like daytime. Police! Nobody move! Authoritative shouts echoed as figures in uniform poured in like a tidal wave. Leo, Diane, and Master Diaz froze, their faces a perfect tableau of shock, terror, and disbelief. The dagger clattered from Leo's hand to the floor. Officers swarmed them, slamming them to the ground. The cold click of handcuffs echoed as their guilty hands were bound. A female officer untied me, helped me up, and draped a warm coat over my shoulders. I looked up and saw Julian Vance standing in the doorway. He was dressed in an impeccable suit, flanked by his legal team, and surrounded by a sea of reporters with cameras and microphones. The flashbulbs went off like a frenzy of lightning, capturing every dramatic moment. "Leo." "Diane," Julian said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the room. "You are under arrest for kidnapping, attempted murder, and fraud. You will face the full extent of the law." "No. Imposible." Leo shrieked from the floor, completely broken. "How did you find us?" "Impossible." Diane's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto me, filled with venomous hatred. "It was you. You called the cops. You ungrateful bitch. Why didn't I just strangle you at birth?" she screamed. A gambler who had lost her final bet. I ignored her, my gaze cold. Just then, one of Julian's lawyers stepped forward and held up a stack of documents for the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we have obtained conclusive evidence proving that Apex Innovations has engaged in long-term, severe financial fraud, tax evasion, and illegal fundraising. We have already reported this to the SEC and the police. As of today, the myth of Apex Innovations is officially over." That final blow completely crushed Leo. He let out a despairing wail and collapsed into a heap on the floor. Judgment Day had arrived. The judgment of the law, of the market, and of public opinion, all three nets closing at once, dragging their sins into the light for all to see. The police, reporters, lawyers, the small basement was packed to the gills. Flashbulbs went off incessantly, capturing the desperate, twisted faces of Leo and Diane for the entire city to see. Diane was still screaming obscenities, a hysterical madwoman who had lost all trace of her former high society poise. Leo was completely broken. He lay on the floor, his eyes vacant, muttering, "It's over, it's all over, my company, my money, the once arrogant business elite, the brother who had used me as a stepping stone, was stripped of his glamorous facade, revealing the weak, pathetic man underneath." Master Diaz, however, remained oddly calm. Pinned to the ground by police, a strange smile played on his lips. His eyes darted past the crowd, fixated on the blood jade Pixiu on the altar. Suddenly he began chanting a string of bizarre, incomprehensible words. As he chanted, the cracked Pixiu began to pulse with a faint red light, and the temperature in the basement seemed to drop. "It's useless. None of you will get away with this." Master Diaz cackled. "I've bound it with my own lifeblood. It will devour all of your luck. We'll all die together." In the midst of this eerie scene, Leo seemed to snap out of his stupor. He saw the glowing Pixiu, and a final, insane spark of hope ignited in his eyes. "Yes. The Pixiu. My Pixiu can still save me." With a burst of unnatural strength, he broke free from the two officers holding him and charged toward the altar like a mad bull. "It's mine. It's mine," he roared, snatching the Pixiu and clutching it to his chest as if it were his last salvation. But the moment his hand touched it, the red light flared violently before being extinguished in an instant. Crack. The sound was as sharp and clear as shattering glass, cutting through the chaos of the room. Everyone stopped, their eyes drawn to Leo's hands. The blood jade Pixiu, the treasure he had staked everything on, split down the middle. A web of cracks spread rapidly across its surface. "No." Leo stared at the object in his hands in horror, as if seeing something truly monstrous. The Pixiu shattered completely, crumbling into a fine powder that sifted through his fingers like a handful of red sand. The instant it broke, a faint black mist, thick with endless resentment, rose from the dust. Within the mist, the vague, tormented figure of a woman could be seen. She looked at me one last time, her eyes filled with sorrow and release, before slowly dissolving into the air. That was my past self. That was the entire life that had been devoured. As she vanished, I felt the great weight that had been crushing my soul for so long finally lift. I felt a lightness I had never known. "Ahawk!" Leo let out an inhuman scream, clutching his head and thrashing wildly on the floor, his mind completely gone. Master Diaz, who had been laughing manically, seemed to have all the life force drained out of him. He coughed up a spray of blood and passed out on the spot. Diane, witnessing this scene of what looked like divine retribution, finally stopped cursing. Her mouth hung open, her eyes glazed over, and she collapsed in a heap. It was all over. The Pixiu was broken. It had spit out everything it had ever swallowed. It spit out Leo's fortune, spit out Diane's health, spit out all of their hopes. And finally, it spit out my tormented soul, granting me justice and freedom. I stood amidst the wreckage, feeling no hatred, no satisfaction, only a profound and unprecedented peace. I looked at the spot where the black mist had disappeared and said silently in my heart, "Goodbye, past Anna. From now on, I will live for myself." That day, the family mansion became the biggest news story in the city. High society feud ends in sibling betrayal. Mother from hell. Spiritual master revealed as murder suspect. Apex myth shatters. CEO has breakdown amidst fraud allegations. Headlines like these, paired with humiliating photos of Leo, Diane, and Master Diaz being led away in handcuffs, spread like wildfire across the internet. The legal proceedings that followed were long but straightforward. Master Diaz, or Ricardo Diaz, was found guilty of multiple counts of fraud, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to death. He may not have been a true master of the dark arts, but he was an expert at exploiting human weakness and manufacturing accidents. Leo received a life sentence for his extensive financial crimes and his role in my kidnapping. In prison, his mental state deteriorated. He spent his days muttering about his Pixiu and his lost fortune, a broken man. Diane, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 20 years. She went completely gray overnight in prison, and her mind soon followed. She was eventually transferred to a psychiatric ward, left to live out her days in a fog of regret and madness. All the family's assets were seized and auctioned off by the court to pay their massive debts and fines. The once great business dynasty vanished without a trace. As for me, the victim and the key witness, I received my due. With Julian's help, I legally reclaimed the share of the fortune that rightfully belonged to me, the portion built on the ideas and work Leo had stolen. It was a considerable sum, more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Julian offered me a position at Vance Industries as Chief Financial Officer, complete with a generous salary and stock options. I declined with a smile. "Julian, thank you for the kind offer," I told him in the same tea house where we first met. "But I think it's time for me to start a new chapter." He looked at me with genuine admiration and wished me well. "Of course," he said. "I hope you find the peace you deserve." I left that city, the place that held so many painful memories. I moved to a quiet coastal town in the south where the sky was blue, the clouds were white, and the sea breeze was warm and gentle. With a portion of the money, I bought a small storefront on an old street near the ocean and opened a bookstore. I called it Serenity Books. I no longer cared about the drama of the business world or the grudges of the past. My days were spent organizing shelves, helping customers, or simply sitting by the window with a cup of tea, watching the world go by. I adopted a stray orange cat and named him Sunny. He's a cuddly little thing who loves to curl up on my lap while I read, purring contentedly. I got back in touch with Mr. Carter, sending him local delicacies and telling him in a letter that I had finally found my inner peace. He wrote back. His letter contained only 3 words, "As it should be." Sometimes, in the warm afternoon sun, I think about my past life. I think about the shattered Pixiu and the people I once called my family. There is no more hatred, only a distant, quiet sorrow. They didn't worship gods, they worshipped greed. And my ashes were simply the final offering laid upon its altar. Now the dust has settled. The clouds drift by. I am finally, truly living for myself.